The doctor's words shattered the quiet afternoon like thunder. The young woman walked out of the hospital clutching a medical report that felt heavier than the world itself. Her legs trembled, her vision blurred with tears, and every step seemed to steal another piece of hope. The diagnosis was cruel. A rapidly progressing eye disease was stealing her sight, and without an expensive treatment, she would soon live in complete darkness. She collapsed onto a bench outside the hospital under the bright afternoon sun, unable to stop crying as people walked past, without knowing that her entire future had just changed forever at that very moment. A tired single father carrying grocery bags noticed her from across the street. Neither of them could have imagined that this heartbreaking meeting would change both of their lives forever. Before this emotional journey continues, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to the channel Heart of Risham if you believe in second chances. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to life. Every weekday morning, Rowan Mercer woke before sunrise to prepare breakfast for his 8-year-old daughter, Eliza. Their tiny rented home was filled with warmth despite the lack of money. Since losing his wife to illness 5 years earlier, Rowan had carried every responsibility alone. He worked as a maintenance technician at a community library, fixing broken shelves, repairing lights, and making sure every visitor felt welcome. His clothes were always clean but worn, his hands rough from years of hard work, and his smile remained gentle even when exhaustion covered his face. People often admired his kindness without realizing how many dreams he had quietly buried to keep his daughter safe and happy. The young woman Rowan had seen outside the hospital was named Celeste Arden. At 28 years old, she had built a successful career, restoring historical paintings in an art museum. Her life revolved around colors, details, and beauty. Every brush stroke she repaired connected her with artists who had lived centuries before. The thought of losing her eyesight felt like losing her identity. Doctors had explained that a rare genetic condition was destroying her retina. Treatment existed, but it had to begin immediately. Unfortunately, the cost was far beyond anything her modest salary or insurance could cover. Rowan approached her carefully, offering a bottle of water without asking questions. His quiet compassion made Celeste feel safe enough to tell a stranger about the diagnosis. She admitted that she was terrified, not only because of blindness, but because she had no family left to help her. Rowan listened without interrupting. He understood the loneliness hidden beneath her words because he had lived with it for years. From that day forward, their paths crossed often. Rowan would occasionally stop by the museum during his lunch break, because the library and museum stood only a few blocks apart. Celeste found comfort in his calm presence, while Eliza quickly became attached to the cheerful artist who patiently taught her how to mix paints and sketch flowers. For the first time in months, laughter returned to Celeste's life. As weeks passed, however, her vision continued fading. Bright daylight became painfully sensitive. Faces appeared blurry. Fine details disappeared one by one. Every morning she feared waking to a darker world than the day before. Still, she forced herself to smile because she refused to let anyone see how frightened she truly was. One afternoon, Rowan accidentally overheard Celeste speaking with a hospital coordinator. The final deadline for surgery had been set only 3 weeks away. If payment was not made before then, her chance of preserving her sight would likely disappear forever. Rowan remained silent, but those words echoed inside his heart for days. That evening, after putting Eliza to bed, Rowan opened an old wooden box hidden in his closet. Inside rested the last precious memories of his late wife: a wedding ring, family photographs, handwritten letters, and a savings account book. For years he had carefully saved every extra dollar, hoping one day to buy a small house where Eliza could finally have her own bedroom. The account represented thousands of hours of overtime, skipped meals, and forgotten personal dreams. He stared at the passbook until sunrise. The next morning, Rowan quietly visited the bank. Without telling anyone, he withdrew nearly every dollar he had spent years saving. It still wasn't enough. So he sold his old pickup truck, worked night shifts repairing equipment, and even parted with the treasured watch his father had left him. Friends noticed he looked thinner and more exhausted, but he simply smiled and said everything was fine. Meanwhile, Celeste prepared herself for blindness. She began learning how to read Braille, memorized the layout of her apartment, and donated unfinished restoration projects to younger artists. Every sunset felt like it might be one of the last she would ever clearly see. The hospital finally informed her that treatment would have to be canceled because the required payment had not arrived. She returned home in complete silence. The following morning, however, the hospital called again. An anonymous donor had paid every remaining expense. The surgery could proceed immediately. Celeste was overwhelmed. She desperately asked for the donor's identity, but hospital policy protected anonymous contributions. She cried tears of gratitude, believing that somewhere in the world a miracle had chosen her. The operation lasted several hours under the bright lights of a modern surgical center. Outside, Rowan sat quietly in the waiting area, despite having told no one he would be there. He wore the same faded work jacket stained with years of honest labor. Every passing minute felt endless. At last, the surgeon stepped outside wearing a relieved smile. The surgery had been successful. Weeks later, as bandages were finally removed during a sunny afternoon, Celeste slowly opened her eyes. At first, everything appeared soft and hazy. Then colors sharpened. Shapes returned. Sunlight poured through the hospital window with breathtaking clarity. The first thing she truly saw was a bouquet of wildflowers resting beside her bed. Without a name attached, she cried harder than she ever had before. Life gradually returned to normal. Celeste resumed restoring priceless paintings, each careful brushstroke reminding her of the second chance she had been given. She never stopped wondering who had rescued her future. Months later, while organizing charity records for a community fundraiser, she accidentally discovered an old donation document. The anonymous hospital payment had been processed through a local foundation connected to Rowan's employer. Further investigation revealed the impossible truth. The anonymous donor had been Rowan Mercer. She could hardly breathe. She also learned something even more heartbreaking. To save her eyesight, Rowan had emptied every dollar intended for his daughter's future home. His truck was gone. His savings were gone. His personal belongings had quietly disappeared one after another. Yet he had never once mentioned any of it. Celeste rushed to the small library, where Rowan still repaired. Bookshelves under the afternoon sun. She found him helping children fix broken bicycles during a neighborhood event while Eliza laughed nearby. Only then did Celeste truly understand the meaning of sacrifice. Rowan had never expected gratitude. He had never hoped for recognition. He simply believed that if someone had the chance to save another person's light, they should never let darkness win. Deeply moved, Celeste refused to let his kindness remain unanswered. Using her restored career, she organized an art exhibition called The Light We Share. Every restored masterpiece carried a story about hope, compassion, and second chances. News outlets covered the exhibition. Collectors purchased nearly every painting, and thousands attended the daytime charity event. Instead of keeping the profits, Celeste established a scholarship and housing fund in Rowan's late wife's memory. Within months, enough money had been raised to purchase a beautiful home where Rowan and Eliza could finally begin a new chapter. The local community, inspired by his selfless act, volunteered to furnish every room. Standing outside their new home on a bright spring afternoon, Rowan realized that genuine kindness never truly disappears. Sometimes it quietly travels through the lives of strangers before finding its way back home in ways no one could ever imagine. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who still believes that kindness can change lives, and subscribe to Heart of Resham for more emotional stories that remind us hope is never lost. Special request, comment below with the words, "Kindness always finds its way back." If you believe one selfless act can change someone's entire future. As the golden daylight faded into a peaceful evening, Rowan watched Eliza playing happily in the yard while Celeste admired the colors of the sky she almost never saw again. None of them spoke very much because some emotions are simply too powerful for words. They understood that true heroes rarely wear expensive clothes or receive public applause. Sometimes they are ordinary single parents carrying invisible burdens while quietly changing another person's destiny forever. And perhaps the greatest miracle is not that eyesight was restored, but that compassion proved stronger than fear, reminding everyone that even the smallest act of love can become someone else's brightest tomorrow.